Welcome to the channel today. Hopefully it won't be too windy for messing up the sound. But I did want to kind of give you an update of how the garden's going, and this is going to be the in-ground part of the garden. This here, we just tilled this up here a few minutes ago. I did use the Sun Joe tiller. I like this for doing maintenance type stuff. You know, I had a regular tiller to till this thing up the first couple of times. Now this here would do a good enough job because it's only tilling down about that far, so it's not doing a deep till. And this soil right here is really good soil, but it's also a little bit low, so it does get a little bit wetter. Over here, we got the potatoes growing, and they've done a lot since last week. They popped up, and you know, going to get a good stand. I do have a few weeds I'm going to have to control, and then as it goes, I will till this middle part and throw up some more dirt so we have a bigger mound in here. The pears, I've also got a deer that's been in here, which bothers me. The pears are still blooming. We'll see if they set or not. They should. And over here is the Asian pears. Their trees aren't quite as big. These little nodules like this, that's where they're going to be putting on the fruit. So that's a good thing when you start seeing these little nubs on the tree. I didn't know one time they had a guy that his professor was talking, and he said that he told one of the students to go out there and trim up the tree. I think it's an apple tree, which they do the same thing. And he went out there and cut off every one of these little nubs. And he said, really, it wasn't his fault. He said, I didn't get mad at him, but we did have a talk. And he said, because I explained to him, and that's where all our fruit's going to be coming from. So basically, that year was a wash because he cut off all the fruiting nodules or whatever. But so that's actually, when you see them like that, that's a good thing. They're getting ready to put on more fruit. Where this one over here doesn't have as many. I did do a little bit of pruning, but I need to do more. Whether I will or not, we'll find out. But pears do want to grow straight up, and that's a bad thing. Sometimes people will weight them down, and you pull them like this, and I weight them down where they're a little bit more, especially if they're smaller like this. They can take these limbs and just, you know, they got a spacer here. They can push them out, or sometimes people will tie them down and weight them down like that. That'll make them fruit faster because it's more horizontal. As long as they're growing up, they tend to want to keep growing up. And then the theory is when they get heavy, start laying over, that's whenever they start producing. So if you can trick them, they will produce earlier. This here's one of my peach trees, and it's starting to bloom out, which is a good thing because there are some of the other peach trees that was up front. The fruit froze off of those. I'm looking at this tree and not seeing much fruit on it. And it also needs to be trimmed up. The ones in there are trimmed up, these haven't. I think this is also an Asian pear. I marked all these things really well and they grew. So that is one thing I do regret, is I wish I had a better way of measuring and putting what type of fruits on. Some of them I do remember, some of them I find the tags on them every once in a while, but this is one of the plum trees that's come from those big trees. It's a root cutting, and I may let it grow. I mean, it's growing right here. It's not a bad spot. It's like that one over there. It's the same way. It's in a good spot, so, or relatively good spot. Over here is the other part, and this is where I'm going to be planting my corn. I'm not going to do it today. I'm going to wait one more week and plant it. I gave up on the carrots. They didn't look good, so I went and tilled those under also. And the onions aren't looking real good either, but they're still, we'll find out. I mean, I got 2 rows going up here of onions, and not kind of what I really wanting, but and here's the plum tree. It's just putting out a massive blooms, and hopefully it'll start setting some fruit. These are some of the other, these are the Odom plums that's come from a sprout. They actually came from the tree well behind you right now. And this is tomatoes, how they look a week later. Even with all the wind and the storms and all that, they're looking good. I do need to start putting cages around them and doing the Florida weave, but we're supposed to get some cold weather coming in next Thursday night. They're saying 38 right now, so I might have to cover these one more time. If I do, it's going to be row covers or whatever, probably, because I think they've outgrown almost everything else. But they are starting to put on some blooms. And these here's putting out blooms, and this is going to be one of the, no, I just got one. That's the row of determinants, and this is the row of, these two rows here are the indeterminates. Right now the indeterminates looking better, but you know, they're all starting to bloom. There's some paste tomatoes there. They're all looking good. I don't think I've had any failures yet. Optimus, ain't I? Those are cherry tomatoes. They were planted later, so they don't look quite as well, but they're looking nice. The only ones I say that still don't look really good was the Brad's Atomic Grape, but they started out looking bad, so we'll see if they grow out of it. It's the only two that I looked at that to me just didn't look real well. I guess I can go show y'all. Well, this one here's looking better, and then the one over here was the one that's kind of hasn't done a whole lot. But you know, they didn't look too good starting out, and they just kind of down in the dirt, and that's not good, but that's what we got. And like I say, these don't look quite as well, but they haven't been in the ground quite as long. So, and like I say, I really need to be staking them up before I'll start falling over. But if I start putting everything around them, even the Florida weave, once I put those posts in, it's really hard to cover them because I'm gonna have to cover them with that fabric cloth. So, and then this is the peach tree that I have trimmed up, thinned out. So I've got it growing outward. It took a long time to bloom, and we'll see this year. I don't think I've made a peach out for this one yet. So we'll see. That there is the, it's a plum color, it's a burgundy color. It's nectar plum. Is that pink bush over here with the red? It looks nice, but I'll say it's the first thing that the worms go for. So, and I will have to start checking for worms pretty soon, and that really needs to be thinned out. And the plum cucurio will come out when stuff starts warming up like we got now. But when you start getting like 3 days in a row of 70-degree weather or 68, 69-degree weather, you start checking, and once you see that, there'll be a little curve in the fruit. Well, actually this way, moon shaped. That means he's been there. And if he puts a dot right up for that little smiley face, then you know he's laid an egg, and that fruit's probably no good. If you just see the cut, the crescent, he didn't lay an egg, so that's okay. You spray it that night. Don't sit there and wait 2 or 3 days. You go check him every day. You see that he's putting those crescents in there, and you spray with whatever you're going to be spraying with. It's going to be one of the more powerful ones. I'm trying to use the malathion, but malathion is not very good as far as sunlight. Sunlight makes it break down really quickly. Also, alkaline water makes it break down quickly. So what I do is I'll put a tablespoon of vinegar in a gallon of water, then mix in my chemical, spray it right then. Don't sit there and wait 30 minutes to an hour. Spray it right then, spray it down, and that does a pretty good job of killing them. I know a couple of years ago, my son that's doing the camera, it was raining that day, and we still went out and sprayed it, and it did a good job because it was the third night, or I think it was the fourth night that it stayed in the upper 60s to 70. We've seen the crescent moons on there. I sprayed it, and then it did seem to kill them out. So, it did work. But like I say, sunlight does, so you want to do it late in the evening, spray it, so it'll be good throughout the night, and then hopefully by the next morning when the sun comes out, when your bees come there, it won't hurt the bees. Now, I have heard that bees don't like the smell of malathion, so they will stay kind of away from it, so that does kind of help, because it is, a lot of people worry about Roundup and things like that. I don't worry that much about Roundup, but I do when it starts coming to malathion and these other chemicals. You need to keep them off of you. If it's a windy day and they get on you, just make sure and go out and wash, take a shower, soap up real good. So anyway, next thing up, and I don't spray unless I have to, but sometimes with the fungicides you almost have to. These are the mijo, and this is how they will grow. They're starting to throw out so you want to fertilize them. I sure already fertilized these, but I think I got a fair amount of fertilizer down. You want to fertilize them like in February, so when they do this, they'll throw out that flush of growth. If not, if they don't have a good fertility to them, they just won't throw out this flush of growth, and they'll just sit there. So if you have a citrus tree that's just sitting there not throwing out any growth, kind of like this one is to a point, You know, it's not throwing out really, it's just starting to throw out a flush of growth, but if it stays that way for another 2 or 3 weeks, and then you didn't get enough fertilizer and you miss that growth. And what they do is they will throw on 3, 4, 5, 6 times, I think 4 or 5 times a year. They'll flush out like that, they'll grow really fast. But if they don't have the fertility, they'll just skip that flush of growth and you just don't get that growth. So you want to make sure you keep the fertility where it needs to be. Don't over fertilize them. If you get too much growth, they won't put out any blooms. But they do need fertilizer, and citrus loves nitrogen. So you do have to put out a fair amount of nitrogen. Over there is the cara. It did die back down except for what was covered up, but did survive the second freeze. That one there is the Jishin. And it's putting out some flowers too, so it's got a flush of growth. So they're looking good. I'm pleased with them. This here is the blackberries, and they're starting to throw on some growth and starting to grow out. This is the ponca in this area here. I do like to taste the pumpkin, and they have good flavor to them. This is some of the Chickasaw plum that I need to cut back or cut down because I do not need them in here. And then over here is Jiu-Jitsu. It's got some blooms on it. It did suffer a little more damage than I thought it did, but it's throwing out a nice flush of growth. So it's good to go. It has been my trooper. It's made about every other year. So this will be, it made last year, so hopefully it'll make this year. But I don't know if it's going biennial or we also had a really hard freeze those other 2 times and lost its leaves. So it's encouraging that it is starting on some blooms. This here is a Primark Freedom, and Primark Freedom is an early blooming and early ripening thornish blackberry. It will make a few fruits in the fall of the year, but nothing to get excited about. You may see 2 or 3 around, get a handful, but its main crop's going to be now, and it is throwing out a lot of blooms. They're looking good, and if we don't get any freezes, we did get a freak freeze last year about this time of year. I think it was March 20th. We got a freak freeze and it did knock them back, but normally that's not a problem. It just was last year. This is a seeded peach tree. They just come up. It is starting to bloom out, and I'm glad about that. If it tastes good, I'll let it grow. If it doesn't taste good, I'll cut it down. So now you don't want, this is kind of bad here because I put this fence and it's cutting on it and all, but you know, all in all, I let it grow. Probably shouldn't have, but if it tastes good fruit, I'll say it's a good thing. And then here is the other plum tree. I have cut back some on it, and I need to cut back some more, prune it up. A lot of times it's good to prune it more than one time because you'll see something you don't see before, and I'll show you what I mean. When I was pruning, I did not see this, but you try to make an open pruning, and I did cut these here out. So this limb needs to come out, and that limb needs to come out. For whatever reason, I didn't notice that. So, because I want this thing to grow out, so it gets a good airflow. I'm not seeing any plums on it because we did get some late freeze. Well, I see one. When you get up at this size, they're probably gonna make it. So you get a lot of small ones. I say make it. It's been pollinated. You will get plums are notorious. Windy days, sometimes you blow them off. Last year, brown rot was really bad. They are getting the size I need to spray it for brown rot. And okay, I don't think that's the crescent moon deal. Even though it looks like that, I think that's a bird pecked it or something. But because it hasn't been warm enough for them to come out yet. I do need to start checking that. And then I do have some elderberries that are coming up. I planted, you know, back during COVID, everybody wanted elderberries because it's going to save everybody. So my wife wanted some. I'll blame her. Of course, she now watches videos, so she'll hear that. But and here's another elderberry here. And like I say, they're pretty easy to grow. I had them out when I was out in West Texas. We didn't do anything for them. They still survived, so they're pretty hardy. And these down here are just some wild dewberries. And that's about all for this here. I will show you one last thing. If you get the blackberries that have thorns on them, this is what they're going to look like. It's going to start blooming out. They usually have pretty good taste, but they do have these vicious thorns. And that is both a good and a bad thing. The good part about it is birds will leave these alone because they don't like the thorns either. The bad thing is they also get you. And what you can do is you can get you a stick and push the stick back and use it to pick, or get one glove, because you really can't pick them with your hands, with a gloved hand. So you almost have to have a bare hand to pick them, but you can have a gloved to push it back so you can pick them that way. But anyway, I got tired of getting stuck, so I kind of went back to going all thornless type. And you do see the ants maybe crawl up and down. I do see an ant hill over there we're gonna have to kill. Fire ants in your garden is a bad thing. Don't let anybody fool you. They're not really, they protect all the aphids. They sting you. They will get into your own fruit sometimes. I mean, they ain't supposed to be here. The imported fire ants, because anybody wants, sometimes people will start getting techno. There is some native fire ants, and that'd be okay. I wouldn't worry about it if it wasn't the imported fire ants, but the imported fire ants they're just going to cause you way more problems than any good. So try to find something. There's only one of them. I think it's called Come and Get It. That's actually authorized for to spray or to put out on your vegetable garden. So be aware of that. That's not actually in my vegetable garden, so I can spray with whatever I want to. But anyway, leave it on fire ants. And fire ants do get inside your pots and containers. What you do with those is you just take the container and move it over, find out where they're coming out. You put down the surrender, I think is what it is, stinks like to high heaven. You put that out and you set your pot back down. That way you kill them without it contaminating your pots. But anyway, enough of that. I'll see you next time. And I do plan on doing the citrus one yet, but it may be tomorrow. Anyway, thanks for watching.